Morning, everybody. Josh here, Solopreneur Grind, 40SG Daily, number 24. It is Monday, March 25th, and pretty fired up for a Monday. Not always. I have hockey late, classic, typical Canadian. I have hockey Sunday nights, so I usually get to bed a little late and start a few minutes later on Monday, but was up and eager to get going this morning, which is usually a good sign. Excuse me as I take my my J Mug sip. Hope you had a good weekend, and I think this weekend's going to be big. Still working on that new service offering for my law firm, and it's going pretty well. And different kind of outreach tactics that I'm doing. I'm doing some cold outreach on LinkedIn with some automation software, and some Facebook group posting, which has proved to be a little hit or miss. I think what I'll do maybe is spend one episode going through each of them and kind of giving you my feedback on how it has worked for me. Now, it's going to work differently for everybody depending on what you're doing, what your niche is. So unless you're 100% doing exactly what I do, copying me, then you might get slightly different or very different results. So I'll probably go through that, maybe spend one episode this week on Facebook groups, one episode on LinkedIn outreach. But for today, top of mind is just outsourcing, because I have a part-time employee that's working for my firm, and I've just been trying to figure out, basically like a VA, because he works remotely. So he works in my city, but it's remote. And I have a lot to say about the topic, not just from finding the right one, selecting a good one, but how to onboard, how to build the right processes so that they can succeed. And then lessons I've learned. Maybe that's a good thing to start with. Need some more of that bulletproof coffee. What I've learned the quickest, now this is my first hire, keep in mind, he's part-time, so not full-time. But the biggest lesson I've learned is that you very quickly realize how well you know your own business and how not so well outsiders might know it too. So what I mean by that is you hire someone because you want to offload some work, right? Whether that be newer work, older work, admin work, quote unquote lower value work that, might not be worth your time. I'll just put it out there. No beating around the bush. But even still, and so what I did is I have templates for everything I need done. I've slowly prepared guides for how to do those things, so someone can go in and say, oh, A, B, C, D, E, here's what I have to do in what order and exactly how. And then there's the matter of giving them instructions on what you need. So for example, to draft an invoice, I have an invoice template, and then I have an invoice guide. So the guide will say, step 1, open invoice template. Step 2, update the date, update the client name, update the fee, whatever. But whoever's doing that for you needs to know the information to input. So obviously they're going to know the date. They need to know the client info. They need to know what fee. They need to know what tax. They need to know if they have a previous balance with you. And you very quickly learn that when you're doing it yourself, you can fly through things because you know all that off the top of your head, right? I know all of my clients' names. I know all their corporate names by heart pretty much. I know how much is in balance. I know for sure what they're going to owe, where they're located, so what tax to charge. Your new employee doesn't know any of that. So you have to tell them in some way or another. And if you take that to another area, let's say something a little more complicated, because in the grand scheme of things, an invoice is fairly simple, right? They only really need 4 or 5 pieces of information. They can fill out the rest. Excuse me as I sip here. Does that annoy you guys? I always wonder, because sometimes you hear it on podcasts. I personally don't mind it, and it does kind of break up my thinking a little bit. It gives me time to flesh out some thoughts. But the one thing to keep in mind is, even if you're an organized person, I like to think I'm a fairly organized and process-oriented person, you're going to have to break things down even simpler. If you've read 4-Hour Workweek, there's a good chapter on that. I forget which one, but there's a section on automation. It must be within that section. And he talks about hiring a VA, how to find a good one, how to give them, how to assign tasks, and he does mention in there as well about how specific you have to be with instruction giving, and you really don't appreciate that until you start doing it. So I would say if you're thinking about a VA or hiring in any job for that matter, really think about and appreciate, or maybe a good way to say this is assume that the person you're hiring, I don't want to say is dumber than you think, because that's not the case. Like, my VA is a very intelligent person, and I'm glad I hired him. But you have to play like they have, a blank slate, which is hard to do when you're subsumed in your own business. So I'm a solopreneur. I've been working on my own law firm for a year and a half. I could tell you where every file in every folder is in the Google Drive. I can tell you every detail about every client. And then you bring someone in who's coming from point zero. But naturally, I think this is probably just the way humans work. You assume a little too much, or that, with less details than are required for me, they can do the same thing. So I don't want to say it's a rude awakening, but it's a bit of a rude awakening. And again, not to devalue employees at all, because without employees, you're not going to grow, you're not going to scale past X amount. And like I said, I love my VAs working out really well. But as the quote unquote boss, and you can't see if you're listening on the podcast, but I'm giving the quotes here, you will very quickly have to learn how to delegate, how to give instructions. And it's actually a really good thing, I think, because it means I have to create an even more systematized process. So I have to create even more detailed guides, which means I have to think even further into how I'm doing things and evaluate them, right? Because if I'm going to write a guide on how to draft a proposal, in most cases when I'm doing it by myself, I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants, but because I've done it so many times, it works out. But when you have to start drafting a guide to teach someone else how to do it, it forces you to put systems in place, which is really good, because if you want to keep scaling, you need those systems. So the way I like to think about it is the guides that I'm preparing for all these things, they're working pieces. And I want myself and the VA to keep improving them, because one day, if things keep scaling and I hire him full time, then maybe hire a third person or a fourth person, you want to be able to hand those guides off to offload some of the training you have to do. And the better they are, the more up to date, the more detailed they are, the easier it'll be for someone else to step in. So anyways, I could go off on a while on hiring, especially VAs. It's been a really good experience so far. If you have any questions about them, just leave a comment below or shoot me an email. Join the email list if you're not already on it. Link will be below in the description of whatever you're listening to this on, whether it's YouTube or podcast. Link to the email list will be below. And that's the best place to get a hold of me too. So hope you enjoyed. See you Tuesday morning, and have a good start to your week.